going to claim to know what's going on behind the scenes at West Ham at the moment, but by anyone's standards, and when I say anyone's, even by West Ham standards, the last 24 hours have been particularly crazy and really hard to get your head around. But I'm going to try. And because I think there's some pointers within this, because it does seem to me at the moment, and I'm not on my own in this, I know a lot of people would share this opinion, that it feels like with some of the quotes getting released by the club, that almost are in the process of throwing David Moyes under bus. Now, what I would say is, before I'm going to sort of present my reasoning for believing this, I don't understand why the club would be doing this. I just think it's easier, as I've said all along, to back him or sack him. If it is true that they're sort of throwing him under the bus, it's almost as if the club are engaged in a PR campaign, which will then allow them to sack him for, I don't know, gross incompetence in the transfer window or whatever the case may be, without any backlash on them. I think it's convoluted thinking. I think it's tenuous thinking, because I actually think they'd get away with sacking him right now without doing any of the skullduggerous shit. You know, they could absolutely do this right now. Here's my reasoning for it. They've sort of half-backed him with Polinia. They have leaked consistently that David Moyes has rejected Tim Steiton's recommendations for players. Obviously, if you don't know, I'm sure you do. Tim Steiton's the new director of football, appointed this season to oversee all transfer-related business at West Ham. The club have very much leaked that there's this transfer committee, this transfer council, that names are presented, and the council consists of David Sullivan, David Moyes, Mark Noble and Tim Steiton. That names are presented during these meetings, and that David Moyes says, no, don't want any of them, I just want my guys. David Moyes apparently wants a series of players who are either British or have Premier League experience. Of course, we've discussed McTominay, we've discussed Harry Maguire, James Ward Prowse, but then someone like Polinia, who of course is a Portuguese, but he was, I think, arguably the best defensive midfielder, certainly statistically, in the Premier League last season. So he's proven he can cut it in the Premier League. But they seem to only be backing him halfway. And it seems to be this sort of almost convoluted process being played out, so as they can almost turn around to David Moyes and say, well, we tried to sign him, but we couldn't get him. So they don't bid quite what Fulham want for Polinia. They stop short of paying what Southampton want for James Ward Prowse. And they don't actually make a deal quite enticing enough for either McTominay or Harry Maguire that Manchester United say yes to the transfer deal. Now, you can either believe or not believe any of that stuff. And do you know what? Without being inside the room and knowing exactly what's happening, it's very, very hard to. What is clear, though, is the board are leaking these stories. You just got to decide whether you believe them or not. And it's very hard to take and sort of collate all this evidence and try and extrapolate what's going on. But let's deal with the case of James Ward Prowse. Then we'll get on to Carlos Borges in just a second. Yesterday, West Ham were believed to have made their second bid for James Ward Prowse, and it was about 25 million, which ironically would allow me to shave this moustache off. There's been some skullduggerous rumours that I mentioned that actually West Ham have to sign a player under the 27 years of age. I don't think I mentioned that, by the way. We have to sign somebody over £25 million, basically. All right. So let's that age doesn't come into it, but I am getting a little bit worried, to be fair, that I'm going to be wearing this slug, sporting this slug atop my lip for the until January at least. Imagine if it was there for a year. This is not a good look for me, walking around. I sort of regret doing it. But anyway, let's make this more about the transfers and less about my moustache. So the £25 million apparently goes in. Southampton reject it. This is really weird, because around the point that the deal was rejected, there were a load of stories going around that it was accepted. Anyway, the news comes out, Southampton have rejected it, and West Ham very much leaked the news, we're not going any higher. What coincided with that were reports that David Moyes was angry. David Moyes was insistent, absolutely insistent, that West Ham get the deal done. So there was definitely, it looks like there's conflict between the two parties. That's supposition. What is clear is there was definitely conflict between the two reports. There was definitely leaks that David Moyes was annoyed that West Ham hadn't pushed further, And there was definitely, West Ham was saying, we're not bidding any higher. That annoyed David Moyes, apparently. And that's really weird, what's going on there. Then you had the situation with Carlos Borges. Now, this is really odd, it has to be said. We chased this player for quite a while. We were linked with him before Tim Steidten ever came in. If you go back long enough in the videos on this channel since the season ended, you'll find it. There's a video somewhere where I think it was rumoured that Man City were willing to offer Borges as part of the deal to try and sign Declan Rice as a make-weight. But it was before Steidten came in. Been interested in this player for a while. We had the deal agreed for at least the last 2 weeks. Yesterday the deal didn't go through. I did a video myself, and it was that Fabrizio Romano had reported that Ajax had just beaten us. They'd scuppered the deal. They'd come in and had nicked him from under our noses, which was a tad disappointing. Then, I don't know, about 2 hours after I published a video, a report started coming in where the club and high sources at the club, and again, there's no doubt about it, the club have leaked this information, that the reason that we didn't sign Borges is because the manager didn't want him. Now, that presents more questions than answers, doesn't it? Okay, so the manager didn't want him. Well, first of all, that's somebody throwing David Moyes under a bus. Forget whether it's true or it's false. That's not the point. The point is that the club wanted that information to be out in the public domain. There's only one reason for doing that, and that's the club want you to be disappointed with David Moyes. The club are saying it's not our fault. The club are saying we were going to sign Borges, the manager didn't want him. So that's the first thing. And I don't like this. I don't want David Moyes to be undermined. If the board had decided they don't want David Moyes, then get rid of him and allow Tim Steidten to appoint a new manager, possibly Xavi Alonso, and get on with it. Otherwise, just don't do this stuff. Just do what David Moyes wants to do. Pay the money that you're meant to pay to get James Ward Prowse and let David Moyes build his British team. Whatever it is, but this halfway house, this through the middle is killing us. It's absolutely killing us at the moment. The other thing, once we've got that out of the way and whilst we've said that that's, a pretty naughty thing to do, really, what about actually just looking at that on its merits, which is David Moyes has allowed us to bid for a player and then at the last minute said no. That's weird, isn't it? If that's how it played out, we've no way of knowing that is in fact how it's played out. That he would have known that we bid for Borges and the last minute he said no. Now either that's true or David Moyes immediately said, when it was first suggested, we've got a deal for this lad from Manchester City, David Moyes might have said no weeks ago. If that's the case, and I don't know, both are equally weird, I think. If that one is true, then it means we've had a no from David Moyes, but we've still pursued the transfer anyway. In many respects, that might be more believable. And what we're doing now is actually, the truth is what Fabrizio Romano said, that we were trying to make the deal happen. We probably hadn't pushed it through thoroughly because we didn't have the full backing of the manager. And Ajax went and pinched him. Maybe just maybe, because the rumour was that Ajax have paid more money to the agent and to the player. You won't convince me that West Ham can't pay higher wages than Ajax. We do. It really is. We do. But it's one thing we do, and that's pay silly bloody wages. That much is true. What is weird on that, though, is to then use it as an excuse for the manager. And I think that's what's happened. I think, reading between the lines, I think West Ham have failed on the transfer, and now we're just blaming the manager for it. Well, I think David Moyes are probably within his rights to say, I rejected this weeks ago. I don't know why this is coming to this now. What appears to be happening is David Moyes is getting increasingly pissed off. And I don't know, I can't speak for Tim Steidten. The one thing that is absolutely clear in all of this is there hasn't been a leak from Tim Steidten yet. There just hasn't. All of that stuff, people claiming to speak for Tim Steidten, it does. There's no one. There is absolutely no one. The leaks are coming, one or two from David Moyes, and all the rest from the David Sullivan side of things. Now, it is natural to conclude that Tim Steidten might be annoyed and might be frustrated with his role at West Ham, right? I guess what you're looking for are people that broke the news that Tim Steidten was joining. So I think what you might find believable is if Fabrizio Romano tweets out that Tim Steidten is considering leaving West Ham, then you might find there's some validity to it. But he's not been here long enough for anyone over here to have any contacts with him. the thing that you might be getting is that Mark Noble is, this is the one thing I've heard, Mark Noble is telling other people what Tim Steidten thinks. I don't believe that for a second. I just don't believe that. It's not something Noble would do. And it's just, most people don't do that sort of thing. So I think we don't know. But there's a really odd situation going at West Ham. The biggest conspiracy theory, I think, at the moment is that all of this is just smoke and mirrors so we can get the signings we really want to get done, completed. Poppycock, actually, for that one. No way, because it's not working, is it? We're not signing any players at the moment. If that's our strategy, it's a foolish one, and it's failed absolutely miserably. Oh, listen, before I go, something I just do want to point your attention towards. We are selling on our Hammers Chat store, which is hammerschatstore.com, signed autobiographies from Tony Gale. And the autobiography is called That's Entertainment. It will be entertaining because Tony Gale is a funny guy, as anyone that's met him will know, or anybody that's been to see him do one of his after-dinner speaking events. Really good. Great guy. So on hammerschatstore.com, go and check it out. We've got a lot of really good stuff on there. Of course, if you are a patron, then if you're an addict patron, you get 30% off our stuff, and incrementally. I think if you're a mild addict, you get 20% off, and so on and so forth. So go and check it out. It's hammerschatstore.com. Really good book, signed by Tony Gale as well. I guess I'll be back tomorrow with an even slightly longer moustache, still wondering what the hell is going on at West Ham United.